important program. Let's just take a look as we get deeper into the conversation centered on policare. Take a look.
Since its change from a police force to a police service, the officers in uniform have had a gradual transformation. Among them is the establishment of a one-stop station known as policare.
We have come with a concept that all these cases of sexual-based violence can be handled at one place. What we want to do, we want to collaborate with other stakeholders. That include the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ministry of Health, the magistrate, and even those involved in counseling.
We are here at the old Nairobi area that is going to house a new policare station that is going to be a one-stop area to handle all sexual and gender-based violence cases.
It's a new way of policing where we will want to give dignity to victims who have been sexually abused.
The new plan, which is being piloted in Nairobi, aims at drastically reducing the time taken to close sexual and gender-based violence cases, but also protect exhibits.
It will be done in a better way than when it is handled from the police station. There is transportation from the police station to the government chemist, then back to the station. There might be some interference when the exhibit is being handled by several officers, and even when the case is brought to court, all those people who are handled the exhibit, they will be required to give evidence in court. But when it's handled by one or two people, we reduce the number of witnesses who are going to give evidence in court.
We are going to have a waiting bay. Once you report your case, we will not refer you with, we will not take your identity as Zipporah, as Wanjiru, as Kamau. We're going to give you a coded profile. We'll profile you in a coded way. So like we'll give you 001. Just like in the banks, we've been to the banks, we've seen you're never called by your name. So that not everybody gets to know that there is a Wanjiru or Kamau who has undergone through this.
According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, there has been a 23.5% increase in SGBV cases since the introduction of COVID-19 containment measures. If successful, the new plan will speed up the wheels of justice for many Kenyans. Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
Okay, so Emmanuel To sort of paints a picture on what exactly policare is meant to do. So I'm joined in studio by three ladies. Allow me to introduce them. First of all, I have Alberta Wambua, who's from the Gender Violence Recovery Center. Thanks for making time. Also in studio, I'm joined by Zipporah Nderito, who's a brainchild of policare. We'll get to hear from her later on, and via way of Zoom, I'm joined by Jackie Mbogo, who's from Reinvent Kenya. Ladies, many thanks for your time. And from that particular story, Alberta, I sort of get a feeling that there's still an issue of sexual gender-based violence in Kenya. Perhaps as you give us the statistics from the effects of the COVID-19 in terms of rise or fall in cases, what fuels the rise in sexual gender-based violence in Kenya? And why is it rampant, despite there being legal systems and institutions as well in place? Because we well know the Constitution mandates the state to address the needs of the vulnerable groups in society, including those who have been affected by this. So what fuels this fire?
Thank you. So yes, with the COVID-19, there is a shadow pandemic, and we've had more survivors of, the upsurge in cases of gender-based violence. Where I work, we've been in existence for over 20 years, and the first time in 20 years, we had to provide medical treatment, psychosocial support to over 4,000 survivors. And what also changed, as you talk about the COVID-19 and gender-based violence, is that there was a barrier in terms of access to timely services for gender-based violence. So a lot of these gender-based violence cases also are what we call late presentations. So women, girls, men and boys would show up beyond the 72 hours. We had more girls, for example, getting pregnant. We have about 208 teenage pregnancies. That's in line with the statistics we got from the National Crime Research that was commissioned by the President, but also from the Ministry of Education. We had more survivors, for example, getting HIV infection, and so on. There's also a barrier in terms of access to reproductive health services and commodities, but I'll speak to that later. So what fuels this is that schools are closed, for example, for about 9 months, and girls, let me talk about, I'll just give a few examples.
Sure.
And girls were not able to get the usual sanitary pads that we're getting from the Ministry of Education. We met girls who would say they had to engage in quote-unquote transactional sex, which is defilement, to be able to get some money to buy pads. We've had women who were not able to reach out for help and men, because then they're within the same confined areas with the alleged perpetrators. So this then explains the barrier to access to services. But why then gender-based violence happens, it's more of a power relation. It's the gender inequalities that are there in terms of many other reasons. You asked why the challenges that are there. One, it's in terms of resources. Resources both, let's start even just from the community, not being able to understand what gender-based violence is. We met people who would say, I perpetrated violence, I went through gender-based violence, but it's because I did not know that I'm being violated.
Okay.
It's a human rights issue, so it's about awareness. It's about also having the services that are there. Just watching the clip, it's also an aspect of dignity, the stigma and discrimination from the community, and not stigmatizing, but also having a response system that's there to be able to respond to survivors, and that's hence the establishment of policare, to be able to address some of these issues.
Okay, we'll get deeper into policare and what it's meant to achieve. But Jackie Mbogwa, just listening to this, does this mean that the Kenyan legal framework, which provides a mechanism of addressing sexual gender-based violence, is debatable right now? Because if we look at the legal policy and framework, I think it mostly focuses on bringing the accused to justice, and there's not much emphasis on the victim, so much focus on the perpetrator. But what say you about this?
Thank you very much. We really cannot say that the legal system is defective. What we can say is the application of the law and the policies that support the legislative framework that supports victim management needs to be applied, and is weak in this case. And you're right, when we focus on the perpetrator, we ignore the victim, we ignore the survivor, we fail to actually provide laws and a legislative framework that begins to ask the bigger question: how do people recover in dignity? How do survivors experience better services? How does the law apply? Is it enough to punish a perpetrator? Should we be hearing more about survivor-centered justice that then encompasses the totality of care that a person needs to recover in dignity? There are issues to do with the law being seen as too slow moving. You see, for a survivor, one thing they want is to finish the process quickly. They want to be able to heal. They want to be able to get on with their lives. But if a case is going to take 5 years, if a case is going to take 3 years, then obviously that period of delay is like you're reperpetrating every other time. So if for the survivor has to be in court every time, they have to face the accused, they have to relive the moment, then obviously there's double trauma that is happening to that survivor. Then there are questions, like I said, of dignity. When the process becomes either too prolonged or the process becomes too perpetrator-centered, then obviously the dignity of the survivor oftentimes gets very compromised. There are things to do with the law not sufficiently supporting recovery centers. As of now, we do not have recovery centers across the country. And even where they exist, they are mainly being funded by private actors. So again, you find sustainability of shelters, sustainability of the support becomes very, very weak. Then we go to the law not sufficiently supporting the health aspects of recovery. Now, if the survivor is going to have dignity, then we have to ask ourselves, are they even getting the right medical attention to be able to deal with the trauma, to be able to deal with the physical manifestation of the violence, to also be able to deal with the emotional aspect of the violence. Finally, is the question of course, bounce back. If violence has happened, then we have to look at legislative and policy frameworks to support bounce back. How does somebody recover sufficiently to be able to have a livelihood? How do they recover sufficiently to be able to live their lives in a dignified manner, in a manner that does not encourage another cycle of perpetration? Now, as long as the law is silent on that, as long as legislation and policy does not support recovery, does not support resilience and bounce back, then obviously we cannot say that even if we have good instruments of the law is being applied well, or that the law can support the survivor sufficiently. Thank you.
Okay, so I get there might be an issue to do with implementation as it is when it comes to the laws and policies. Okay, so Zipporah, from where you sit, and someone might be hearing of policare for the first time, and they've seen the positive messages out there. It's a progressive move from the police service. The question might come up, what exactly informed the formation of policare, and what objectives does it seek to serve at the end of the day?
Okay, good morning, viewers. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Allow me at this very early moment to appreciate the leadership of the National Police Service for embracing the new initiative, our policare. Our Inspector General, Deputy Inspector General, both in administration and KPS, and our DCI, they've picked the idea when we brought it to them. Policare is changing the narrative. We want to demystify that what people believe or what has been expressed about the National Police Service is service provider that scares its clients. So we want to change the story and tell you that we care, and specifically matters SGBV. What informed this idea? It's an idea that has grown for about 12 years through experience working and listening to victims of SGBV. The process, the current mechanism has not been very friendly. It's tedious, it's cumbersome, it's traumatizing, it's re-victimizing. And because we are offering the service in disintegrated manner, you realize that the victim got to have a journey from one police station to another service provider to the hospital, to have specimens taken, and then to go to our police surgeon or to a district hospital to have the police medical form, number 3, the famous P3 form filled in, the victim going again to bring the witnesses, the visiting and revisiting of the crime scene, collection, preservation, presentation of forensic evidence. And by the time that person gets to court, if we have a watertight evidence that the case will start trial, it takes a long time. So these disintegrated services make the victim tire along the way. It also makes the victim look for alternative justice, a means to settle the issues. Don't forget that there is also the perpetrator who also has advanced interference with the case or even with the witness. There is a lot of threats that comes with this kind of cases. So in conceptualizing this idea and looking at this journey and the trauma and the pain and even the unmentioned suicides and homicides that are related to these cases after the result of the offense, you realize that somebody needs to walk this journey with the victim. And so we looked back and said, as we chase the perpetrator, because we are enforcing the law, and that is our mandate as National Police Service, to arrest, to bring the perpetrator to book. Where did we leave the victim? Who is walking with the victim? So we made a turn back, and I paused and checked. I am chasing the perpetrator who is very elusive. I'm chasing a perpetrator who probably will have a good lawyer in court and win this case. I'm chasing forensic evidence that probably was adulterated along the chain of custody, and then all the way I lose the case in court. And that has a lot of adverse effects when we lose our cases and the victim feels that justice was not delivered to them.
Okay.
So I looked back and I said, let me go back and walk the journey with the victim. And that's what changed the whole scenario. And with a lot of support from well-wishers and more so the Office of Inspector General and his deputies, this journey started and the concept is on the way. And we're happy that you're embracing it.
Okay, you've mentioned the journey has started. By the way, good move right there from the paper point of view. But how exactly will policare benefit this sexual-based violence victims? What are the numbers so far? You mentioned it's already rolled out, is it?
It has not yet been rolled out.
Okay.
It is an initiative. Right now, the journey is on the development of the policy, the strategy and standard operating procedures, which are now at a very advanced level. The Inspector General has just signed them, and I think I do have a copy here, which I can show the viewer.
Okay.
We already have a policy, we have the concept, we have a strategy, and we already have standard operating procedures.
Okay.
So this journey has just started. Actually, what we had was not launching, but it was groundbreaking of a nice building that we have at Old Nairobi area, which is a model which we are only showcasing for now. We are hoping that the Nairobi project should pick quite very fast. There is already a lot of goodwill. The next policare center is coming up in Nanyuki, supported by Batuk through Jackie Bulgo, her leadership with the Lenvent. She also supported the development of the policy strategy and the SOP. We cannot wait to launch. The launching is coming very soon, and all Kenyans of all walks are invited.
Okay, I was hoping to get the date of the launch, but I'm sure it's work in progress right now.
It's a work in progress.
Okay, no problem. Allow us to take a short break. When we come back, I'll be back with Alberta Wambua and Jackie Mbogwa as well, as we take a look at this journey so far. We've talked about the challenges, the problems, so let's evaluate the solution.